Welcome to today's Explainer. We're unpacking a really fascinating and honestly deeply layered media and political crisis that's unfolding right now in Pakistan and the surrounding region. We're going to trace a straight line from a major national media blackout right down to the localized unrest that actually sparked it.
Okay, let's dive into this. It's one of those headlines that completely makes you stop scrolling, right? A major government outright blocking access to a massive global news network. For users sitting inside Pakistan, going to aljazeera.com suddenly just returned an error. Meanwhile, right across the border, the site was fully accessible. So you have to ask why. What exactly was being reported that pushed authorities to throw up such a drastic digital blockade?
Here is our roadmap for today. First, banning a global network. Second, roots of the unrest. Third, crackdowns and political rhetoric. And fourth, the press freedom paradox.
All right, starting with part one, banning a global network.
So, the immediate spark for this whole crisis was actually just field reporting. According to our sources, the Qatari state-owned network Al Jazeera started aggressively covering these ongoing protests and deadly crackdowns happening in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, or POK. Their headlines were highlighting internet blackouts, roadblocks, and basically a whole region left in limbo. Well, the state responded by completely blocking the website domestically. And to be clear, this wasn't some subtle algorithmic shadow ban, it was a hard intentional block on the flow of international information coming into the country. And the government's justification for this ban, it is actually quite revealing. Authorities formally accused the network of engaging in yellow journalism. Sources indicate the state argued that having foreign journalists and international media around was essentially just a front to drive foreign agendas against Pakistan. But critics immediately pointed out the sheer irony here. They argued that slapping the yellow journalism label on basic field reporting was really just a tactical cover for the government to dodge accountability for things like electoral flaws and their own heavy-handed security measures. Moving into Section 2, Roots of the Unrest. Let's look at why these protests started in the first place. When you zoom in to the localized causes behind all the flashy headlines of a media ban, what you find is a massive, genuine grassroots uprising. These ongoing demonstrations are being spearheaded by the Joint Awami Action Committee. And we're not talking about some small political faction here. Our sources describe massive sit-ins and total boycotts spreading like wildfire across areas like Rawalakot. What's truly striking, though, is the demographic shift in these crowds. Reports show that women and children have literally taken the lead in many of the demonstrations, vowing to just camp out until their voices are heard. And this brilliantly illustrates what is actually driving folks into the streets. It really comes down to basic survival and representation. The core grievances include skyrocketing electricity rates, just crippling inflation, and severe shortages of everyday necessities like flour. On top of that, you have these deep, simmering political frustrations. Amidst a three-phase assembly election, the Pakistan People's Party, which, ironically enough, is a government alliance partner, has alleged severe polling mismanagement, the disenfranchisement of voters, and an outright denial of basic amenities like water and power to the entire region. Believe it or not, this massive economic standoff basically boils down to the number 32. That number represents a very crucial broken promise. According to our source data, the government and the people of the region had previously sat down and agreed upon a 32-page charter to address all of those grievances we just talked about. The explosive unrest we are seeing today happened because the authorities reportedly just reneged on that 32-page agreement. And that betrayal triggered a devastating 2.5-month-long economic blockade on the local population. Let's look at Section 3, Crackdowns and Political Rhetoric. So how has the state handled this boiling point? Well, as detailed by multiple reports, the response has been heavily militarized. Security mobilizations have been deployed basically on a war footing. Sources cite intermittent firing by security forces during overnight operations to suppress the sit-ins. The violence actually got so severe that a PPP leader was reportedly killed in the clashes. But honestly, the most alarming reports are the claims that snipers and specific terror elements have been attached to army units to target protesters. There are even reports that police forces are literally walking into hospitals to arrest wounded demonstrators right out of their beds. The sheer human toll of these clashes is staggering. To put it into perspective, medical professionals on the ground reported having to set up makeshift tents just to handle the overflow of patients coming in. Doctors stated they treated between 50 to 60 critically injured protesters in a very short window of time, and tragically they noted that 15 to 20 of those individuals were suffering directly from gunshot wounds. So the crucial point is how the government actually officially perceives these protesters. And this quote really says it all. When he was asked about potentially opening a dialogue with the local demonstrators, Pakistan's defense minister, Khawaja Asif, flat out stated he does not foresee any dialogue. He boldly declared that he brackets the protesters with India, placing them firmly in the ranks of enemies of the state. That kind of rhetoric effectively strips the protesters of their status as everyday citizens demanding basic rights and completely reframes them as hostile foreign actors. Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, the press freedom paradox. If we zoom out to the broader global media landscape, we start to uncover some glaring, almost unbelievable contradictions. Sources point out a profound geopolitical irony here. See, Al Jazeera has historically been viewed as a platform that is highly sympathetic to the Islamic world's narratives. It's actually a network that Pakistan itself has frequently leveraged in the past to push its own diplomatic agendas on the global stage. Yet, the very moment that network turned its journalistic lens onto Pakistan's internal crises and alleged human rights violations, the state actively revolted against it and shut it down completely. Now, what's really interesting about this dynamic is the paradox it creates in global metrics. Look at the Reporters Without Borders Press Freedom Index. Pakistan is currently ranked at 153, which is actually higher, meaning supposedly more free, than neighboring India, which sits at 157. Commentators in our sources genuinely struggle to make sense of this. I mean, how can a country that completely blocks a massive international news website outrank a neighboring country where that exact same news website is fully accessible and openly critical? To give you a little context for that paradox, let's briefly look at India's track record with Al Jazeera. India did issue a brief 5-day ban on the network's English channel back in 2015, specifically because the network was displaying an incorrect map of the disputed Kashmir region. And later, in 2023, India did censor a specific documentary. However, as the timeline shows, today Al Jazeera's website, its articles, and its channels operate openly in India, despite the fact that they frequently publish content that is highly critical of the Indian government. Seeing that historical context makes Pakistan's permanent blanket ban on the website stand out even more. As we wrap up this explainer, we are left with a really critical thought to ponder. We've seen local citizens protesting for basic survival needs, a government responding with severe force and hostile rhetoric, and a sweeping media ban designed to keep absolutely all of it in the dark. So, I leave you with this. When international, independent media is completely locked out of a region, who gets to write the history of that conflict? Will it be the voices of the people on the ground, or solely the state that controls the servers? Thank you so much for joining me today to explore this incredibly vital topic. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the data, and I'll catch you next time.